Hello and Happy New Year. This is Astro Bats Boy coming at you with my sketchbook number 2 tour for 2022. This is actually a book that has been happening for quite some years now, probably around 10. I had this back before I made a switch over in career, and it was kind of like a catch-all type of book. As I look into it, it comes from Barnes & Nobles, from the sketch series. It's archival, tone paper. It's good for all types, and I really put it through it with originally just doing pens and markers and then some watercolors later on. So as I take you on this, you'll get a gist of a little bit of my past few years and see how I tend to work, which is all over the place, and I jump around as I've mentioned before. But let's get started. Here we go. Originally, the first page you're seeing here is an excerpt that I took from a Canton watercolor sketchbook from back my college years, and I finished it recently. Originally it was just a drawing with some splatters. There was a lot of ink blot tests that I ended up doing and thinking, make something cool out of it, and I finished rendering them recently. What you see on the other side of this is more of a study, I would say, most likely from another person. I feel this is a drawing specifically from another character. This next page is more of a classical look that you're going to be seeing in this book. This is actually a face chart of a makeup look I ended up doing for myself. I may post the image of the final product I did on myself. This was using markers, I believe, and much later on, more recently, I added some iridescent or neon watercolors for the background. An original drawing, giving you zombie meets glamour meets mummy, and I threw in some highlighter. I'm gonna say pretty much for a lot of this ink work, it's probably Micron, and if not, it's probably a Winsor & Newton Fineliners. I was really into Fineliners back in the day, and you'll see there are going to be some staining caused from that because some of it was not archival. So here is a prime example of what this sketchbook most likely looks like. And something I tend to do a lot with my sketches is I'll start with a body part, which you shouldn't do, and then later on I go and I try to finish the body, and it ends up looking very juxtaposed, oblong, but I go with it. It's a sketchbook, it's a no judgment zone, so later on I just added some watercolors just to test. Like I said, I really use this book as a gauging for new watercolors that I obtain. Now these 2 pages are from, once again, that Canton sketchbook. That was a watercolor book, and they're enhanced. Originally, it was watercolor tests or just scribbles, and years later, more recently, I finished them. This page right here is a prime example of what I envisioned this book to have been, but more realistically, this is what you're going to see. So we have the second page here, and once again, this is probably done with like Micron, and I ended up coloring it later on, and I'm really happy with the outcome of it. So here we have some more from my imagination random sketches. Like I said, in this book, you'll notice I draw body parts, and sometimes I'll go back and finish them. It's kind of like a lucid dreaming of sorts, in that I start something but I won't finish it, and I'll revisit it and try to see what I can continue. Like with this, it has watercolors, it's markers. It's a little more abstract. It's a little Bowie too as I'm looking at it. Here I have some hand studies done with fine liners, then I went with markers, nothing special. This is an original character I did with fine liners, then with markers. I think the Kuretake Markers is what I used on this. I had gotten a free 1 or 2 of them, and I was just testing them out later on. As mentioned before, I'm going to keep saying this, but everything originally was a fine line drawing that I went on and later in color, like this one. It was a Micron, then later on I did it with Copics to fill it in, and I just kept it at that. I really like how it came out, so I might one day scan it, do something with it. Make it a print or something, a sticker, who knows. So here we have another pen fine liner drawing, which I later on went in with some Winsor & Newton student grade watercolor to test it out, and I'm really happy with how this one came out. Another face, and this face is part of a face originally which should have been a face chart or a face study that I kind of just was not happy with and left it and revisited. You're going to see faces like this repeated. Here we have not a fine liner, as you can see. This is probably the Winsor Newton pen or some kind of marker. Here we have another one with markers and a little bit of neon, I think Sumi ink in the background. Another fine liner or marker pen. And I went in with some markers and some watercolors. Same with this one. This one's really cool. I kind of want to redo it, and it's funny because I really ended up doing so many versions of it in the sense of coloring. I kept adding more and more color. But it would be great to actually do this more accurate with perspective. It's like you're looking up at her. She's a badass looking down at you. Another simple drawing, which I just later on went with some pops of colors. Really, it became a swatch page. Here we go. More current drawing of something I saw in makeup style that I kind of liked. Kind of reminded me of Kiss. And I said, why not try to replicate it on a tool character that I made right here. And he's a mixture of markers, fine liners, and a little bit of watercolor, I believe. Same with this person right here, this knight. I really, you could tell I focused was I did the face first, and then years later it was in the body with the armor and the hand. That's why things are not accurate with the position of holding with the hands. Focus right there on the face. That's what I usually go for, and everything else is an afterthought. Once again, it's a sketchbook, it's ideas. Nothing here should be ultimately finished. Empty space, because it's supposed to be like random action, like almost like an X-Men character, I think. Kind of like surfing through, and then this Daria looking character, which I tested some watercolors with, and this is part of, you'll see, a series of different face charts that I did for something. And you see, I do the main drawing and it tends to transfer, and if I'm not happy with it or just out of boredom, I end up doing different versions, like this one, more of an ocean type character. Random watercolor splotches that I ended up creating characters out of. There's no real consciousness to this. It's really just what I thought I saw. Another face chart. This looks like markers and watercolors. Another face chart that I ended up just doing watercolors on to play with, testing things out. Really like how it came out. Another face chart I had done for something. And the original face chart of another project that I really liked and I didn't want to color on top. Another unfinished face chart with watercolors, testing out different versions and gradients. Another face chart that I went with markers and really colored in, giving you Queen of Hearts. Another face chart that I went with watercolors, giving you fire energy. Really like how this one came out. And this is more of a classic of what usually my sketchbooks were like back then. Fine liners, I was really into Rococo, beautiful, young, Victorian-esque inspired models. And I decided not to color this. Maybe I'll scan it, make it into a print. Another face chart. Some notes. Another face chart with some notes. And here we go. Some more random characters. Honestly, I did one face and I wanted to fill it out, so I added more. Another face chart, but I really like how this one came out because I really try to flesh out more of a mod-esque feel to it. It's fun. I really like how the hair and the turtleneck came out. This is inspired and heavily referenced from, I believe, the third Hunger Games. One of the characters that I saw in the film had these tattoos like a tiger, and I was really fascinated by that. I remember that night I went home and I just sketched this out and then finished it with some fine liners. Another fine line drawing, but this time light watercolors, but I was afraid to stain it because I wasn't sure if it was Micron, so I ended up just really coloring it with these Holbein pastel color pencils. It's okay. I want more color. What can you do? Another one where I really just started right there, came back later with my markers and finished it out and then doing some color. Another drawing. I think this specific drawing might be the first drawing I did to this book. As you can see, I just jumped and went straight to the middle and didn't care. But this is very character building, kind of like also giving you Another body study, which originally I believe started with the face or the legs, and then I tried to complete it, went in with some watercolors. I kind of like it. Another one where I started with the face and wasn't happy with it. I think it was just the eyes, and then later on I went ahead and tried to complete it and added body parts. So they have a bit of an oblong Frankenstein look, but I like it. This page is my least favorite of the whole book because it was a random sketch. I had done it in pen, didn't do pencil, and then it was what it was. This is another face concept I did for Floral Beard, which never came to be actually, but I finished out the character, more or less. Another one where originally it was just a sketch marker of a person, went with Fineliners, and then finished it with watercolors. Same with this. Originally it was started with just the legs, and then I tried to finish the body, torso, and then went in with some markers, watercolors. Now this might be the first or the second most likely drawing that I did, and this is inspired by an artist that had competed in Face Off. I cannot remember who it was, but I really enjoyed the creature they came up with, and I wanted to redo it from memory. Like I said, a lot of this is almost like a lucid daydreaming book based off of ideas that I'll get during the day, and I go ahead and try to complete or jot down. This is one of my favorites. This was playing with, I believe, Sennlier Watercolors, but originally Fineliners. It was definitely one of those where you'll see I always focus on the face and an afterthought. Maybe I'll throw a drape, I'll throw a cloak, or I'll finish off the body. But I really enjoy how the colors came out. Same with this. This originally was just the mouth, and then I worked it all out. You'll see something consistent with all my sketchbooks. I always play with a lot of hair. I love people with long hair floating around. Same thing, but this time testing out Kuretake Markers, Canson excerpt, watercolor splash, and inking on top. Like the colors in that. And this was fun. Originally, once again, just the face, and I ended up finishing the body. And I think I went in with markers, but then I finished it with some Sennlier watercolors, especially for the hat. I love how the gradients came out. Very powerful and regal. Here we go. Another character. Originally done in neon markers, Fineliners, then a little bit of markers and watercolor, just for a splash in the background, giving me Grace Jones vibes. Another face chart. This was for a neon UV look that I did. See, planning out the lashes and the look itself. Another fine line drawing with, once again, a person with a lot of hair, obsessed with hair work. Another excerpt from the Canson watercolor sketchbook, and that was very much a butterfly effect, Rorschach, as I tend to always correlate things with body and faces. Have another one here, and this was done with Fineliners, and originally it was just the faces, and I went ahead and completed the bodies, and once again testing watercolors like Sennlier to see what I could do with foam and mesh. Pretty boys and pretty colors. This right here is one of the last ones, when it originally was just a swash of color, and then I went with some random ink to finish off the page. This was like a Frankenstein's monster, starting with the monster face, and I didn't want to make it symmetrical and completed, so I did a pretty face. Another X-Men character. This is definitely looks like, not Spike, what's her name? Marrow, that's her name. She has bones like come out of her in like an exoskeleton armor. She's a cool character, and I went later on with markers and then later on with watercolor. Dynamic pose. Here testing out the Kuretake markers on a face, fineliner, not fineliner, regular marker, because I believe she did stain. It's random drawing that's stained by the markers, and here another drawing with fineliner markers and then a little bit of watercolor. Kind of really like how it looks, very 80s. Another fineliner, which I then went with, I believe this is the Primamarketing Watercolors, not sure what they're called now, but was using, I think, the skin tones and some of their primaries. I like how it came out. Here we have another fine liner drawing. Hair, ram horns, beautiful side view face. That's what I was typically always doing. I didn't have time for color. It's so funny because I avoided color. I didn't have time for it. I thought I was just, you know, just time for the line work, and then everything else would fill in later. And now I'm more focused on doing things traditional and having more prep to fulfill these like looks. Another makeup, very Bowie inspired, and because it's Bowie inspired, I later on finished with the neon watercolors for the hair. Rest in power, Bowie. Here we have another excerpt from the Canson book, and as you see, like, I love to do half a body, but then I'm really lazy about wanting to continue it, so honestly I just splashed on watercolors to finish it out, you know, and see how abstract it would look. Here's another, I think these were face charts that I ended up just finishing up more. Very fire and ice, or ice and fire. Some markers, maybe watercolor for the bodies. No. Another fun character that I did with some type of marker which bled, some marker work, and then filled in with a phoenix. As you can tell, a lot of these X-Men characters were done like on days that like I was just bored. Whenever I want to self-indulge myself, I'll just go back to my nostalgia and do something from comic books, cartoons, animated series, because they're fun to draw. This was another one where I started on the face and then I finished the body later on, and definitely did some watercolors. I'm not sure which watercolors I used. This might be, I'm thinking, a mixture of either Holbein or Sennlier. Really enjoy how this page came out. Another one with Sennlier, I believe, for the background. Once again, it's a Frankenstein of sorts, where I did the body first, did this face second, and then I filled in the gaps. Really enjoy how the background came out though. Really fills it in and gives it like the surreal look, dreamlike. As you can tell, I really don't do backgrounds. For me, it's the focus of the face. Another face chart right here. Markers, a little bit of watercolor splash. Another one where it was the face, and then later on I came to the hair and then try to do the body and just doing some watercolor to fill it in. It was nice coming in and actually doing things in watercolor because it almost became like a coloring book for me, which was just a way to just experiment color and pass the time. Really calming. Once again, as I mentioned before, when something transfers, and because the face was there, I was like, you know what? Let me try to make a new character out of it. Some more face charts. This is one of my first early makeup designs that I did. Very swan. Has a bit of an Asian feel to it too. Another face chart, something that I did on myself. Really enjoyed how this one came out. It's almost like a mask, a bleeding heart mask. I think this was for Valentine's Day. Another oblong or exquisite corpse, you might say, where like, once again, I did the legs first, and then I said, I can finish the body, and that's what I got. Another piece I really enjoyed from this like ethereal piece, where once again, I did the face first, finished the body, and then added some details like, you know, the gold. That's Winsor Newton gold, I believe. Once again, you see the transfer. Oh, so might as well make a new character out of him. You were giving feminine, a little more masculine. And then, once again here, I really enjoy this one. This is like one of my favorites. Originally supposed to be like a cat, but then I just left it, and then I went and added some hair and some watercolor. Very Kiss. It'd be great as some type of sticker or something. Once again, I did a face with some watercolor. Beautiful eyes. Another face study filled with markers and then watercolor. Same thing here. I probably started just the dress, and then I added leg, added part of the torso or lower half, and just left it at that. I was like, no, you're gonna get cut off, and I don't want to try to like do a position where you're gonna look funny. Mars, Sailor Moon, an indulgent moment. Done differently. I wish that things hadn't bled though through the markers and the watercolors. Some random sketches right there. Again, random sketch. And an excerpt from the Canson watercolor book, where I just once again splash it on it. Ooh, I see hair, 80s hair, glam. Alright, enjoy. Face. Another piece I like right here originally was just eyes. And then I said, you know what, I think I can turn this into a face. And I did, add a little bit of hair, and then tested some markers and watercolors and left that at that. Another face study, which I later on went and added color. Some eyes, some eye designs that looks like for a face chart, or some type of character that never came to be, like some kind of special effects character, I believe. Some lips, once again from the excerpt of the different pages I had splatted on with inks. It was giving me beauty, so I just did some lips. This was like a mistake. Originally I did the legs, and then I got stuck with the body, and I think something had bled out from the marker, so I said, you know what? You're gonna be half reptile, half fish, almost like a mermaid of sorts, but backwards. Another face study with markers, same with here, legs, and then I went in with the body and not happy with how the body came out. Another Cellar Scout pose. I think it was the original one before I went ahead and did then the Mars, but it wasn't successful. And this is here testing some fine liners, but some new Winsor Newton markers, which I really liked how that one came out. Originally she was just a beauty face, and I ended up giving her kind of a creature-like look and added some watercolor. Another face chart of a reptile look I did on myself, and I had sketched it out prior. Some notes. It's actually from a vinyl figure I had. I was bored and I was just like looking at its features. And that's pretty much it. So this is my sketchbook 2. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see what else I bring out into the new year. Thanks.